We're going to talk real quick, extend our discussion from previous about sharing state and understanding state and managing that inside ACEs. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how we might share that state across multiple controls. So a common scenario, you've got common bits of data you want to get, but then multiple controls need to use that. So there's more efficient patterns than having each adaptive card extension go get that data. We can actually have ways to share that data between components. The one we're going to talk about today is using library components, which I think is a neat capability in SharePoint Framework and something that works as well in adaptive card extensions or web parts. So once again, I've got two ACE cards here on my screen, and I'll remind you, you don't come to my demos for visual design points. So I've just got a couple of things here that I'll explain shortly, but a string, a length of some items, then an all items dot length there. And you can see both these cards are showing the same information. I'm going to hit, whoop, that's not F12, that's F12. So if we go over here to the network tab, widen my browser. Okay, there we go. We're going to clear this out, and we're actually going to go to the application, and we're going to clear out our local storage and our session storage. Clear this out and go back to the network tab real quick, and we hit F5. And so you'll see over here in the network tab as things load up slowly but surely. We hope things load up. Things are still loading up. We'll add our cards back, making the demo a little bit harder, but you'll see we've only run our queries one time. So we got two cards on the screen, but you can see we're only getting, in this case, this is the one for the 30 items, and then we're actually getting the 6,000 items using these various queries here, but they're only getting run one time. And that's kind of the key here is we want to get data once and store it. So we're actually storing this in the session storage. So if we look at that, we've got where is session storage? Maybe not. Maybe it's not showing up in session storage. I'm putting it in local storage. Haha, sorry about that. So in local storage, here's our key, get lots of items. You can see our stuff there. And we've got another key here, which is actually just a generated hash value. So we've got that stuff in session storage. That's, again, part of our conceptual state model. So the state isn't, again, just what's inside the ACE. It's our entire state model of the application. So we're using some caching there in local storage to make things a little bit more efficient. Let's have a look at how all that's actually working. So here's our two adaptive card extensions. And just to real quick, we'll look at the first one. And up at the top, we're importing a function called bind data lib. Don't worry about what that does quite yet. From ACE Data Broker, that's the name of our shared library extension. And down here, we're getting that library by binding that data lib. Remember, in SharePoint Framework, you want to base everything off the local context. That tells you where in the world you are rendering, gives you all the information you need, so you don't need to make any assumptions about the environment. And then we're doing a couple of things. We're calling this getString method here. We're calling the getString method here. And then we call the getString method again here. And I just want to point out that all these strings are the same, and that'll be important in just a second. The other thing we're doing is we're loading up some items using a method here on the library that we get back, and we're calling this other method on. You've seen methods get called before. It's very exciting, but we get all the items, and then we're seeing items.length there, and we're seeing all items.length there, and that's showing you how we're getting the UI updated and what we're doing. If we look at the second ACE, you will see the exact same code. So no difference here in the code, nothing to highlight other than to show you we're calling the exact same methods from the exact same imported library in both ACE components. Also important to note, these ACEs could be SharePoint Framework web parts. They could be SharePoint Framework application customizers. We could share these shared libraries across all those various solutions. So let's look. This is in the project. There's the ACE project and the library project. Library projects need to be their own project. So I've got my own project here, and I'll drop the link a little bit to the documentation on how to get that all set up. But you'll see here in the library project a little bit more of what's going on. So we've got setting up, in this case, we're setting up our PnP.js stuff, but this would be true of using any SDKs, the Graph SDK, any other SDKs you might be using, even for your independent APIs or your home developed APIs, would all work exactly the same way. So you can set this up in the library component once. And then we've got a couple of things. I wanted to highlight again this random string here. So we get that once, and we get that string, and we set it here in what is conceptually a module. This is our ACE data broker library.ts, which is a module. So we're getting that string once. And you can see no matter how many times we called that method, we're always getting the exact same random string back. And what that tells us is something really cool. We're loading this shared library once on the page. So we could actually use this library to help us share some state, coordinate between our web parts. So we can have web part messaging. We can do a lot of different stuff with that idea. We're setting up some storage. That's what we're going to use to communicate with local storage. And this is just some TypeScript to expand our PnP JS SPFI interface there, just to add our methods. And then there's our bind data lib. So this is actually just getting that context and doing some setup for the PnP JS. But then we've got our methods here. So here's get lots of items, and we've got a list here. We have a function called get all, and in PnP.js, so that's going to get all the items from the list. So we're getting like 6,400 and some. That's a lot to do, so we only want to do that once, right, as few times as we can. And we're using our PnP.js storage to actually get or put that in the cache, and we got a cache key there. So nice and easy way to coordinate that. Again, similar patterns for lots of different SDKs out there in the world. And we're also doing some blocking. So we're seeing if we have a running query, we want to stop. So these ACEs are going to load randomly, right? You can't ever count on a certain ACE to load first or second. So we have to sort of asynchronously block. And we're doing that with promises in this case. So we're blocking on a running promise. We're getting something I just in this sample called a resolvable that gives us a promise and the function to actually resolve that promise. And then we resolve that down here in the finally. And then we return our results here out of this function. The power of this is because we're using the caching, if we've already blocked and we've made the request, it's going to go through the first time, put it in the cache, and when we unblock here the second time through, it's going to get it from the cache. And that's why we only saw one request go out. Here we've got get items cached. That's the second method we had, just to show sort of a different technique. We're using the PnP.js caching in here, and we're using a thing I did just for this demo called blocking that sort of is going to block that call and mimic the functionality here just inside our PnP.js toolchain. We won't go into too much detail there. You can check it out in the sample, but just another approach there. And we're using top to only get 20 items. I think in the actual ACE we ask for 30, but just a way to do it. And again, using the cache, using the browser cache in Node. This could be various tons of different caching technologies there, but conceptually the same idea. Through this library component, we're able to share these methods across the ACEs and only get the data once. And you can see here in this get string, we're just returning that string that we created up here and set once. And again, that shows us this library is only getting used once. So it gives you a lot of power to come back and do stuff there. So you can certainly look at that. And if we come back to our thing here, we've got the stuff in the cache. It might be expired at this point. But just to highlight the advantage here, if we come to our network tab, we did have to make those requests again. They were expired. But if we refresh the page, we'll get our data back, and we saw no network requests related to getting those items. So all of that makes our page much more responsive, much faster, helps reduce some cogs on the server, reduces chances of throttling across your service. So it's a really great way if you're deploying stuff within your company, if you're an ISV, this is another great pattern to look at, but it allows you to coordinate across ACEs, web parts, application customizers, across pages. So if you're using local storage or session storage, you can actually coordinate this across page loads. So for example, latest news might update every 30 minutes, load that once into local storage, save it, lots of different patterns to use there. But using those libraries, you can definitely have that across all of your different components and coordinate your requests and make your requests very intelligently and carefully to ensure you're managing load properly. And so that's a nice quick summary again of how to share state across components, extending our discussion on state. So I'll pass things off to Brian, who I think is going to pass things off to Seb. I'll look at the questions in the chat and try and get those answered. And then I will also paste in right now a link to the SPFX library component tutorial. Definitely check that out. That's how we were able to build this sample. So thanks everybody for having me back, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'm surprised you're not out of breath because it sounded like you just had a long stream of awesome content there in demos. So thank you so much for sharing all this great stuff.